Hello everybody, and this is Chaos with Chaos Esports Productions, bringing you another viewer cast. Today we're taking a look at a PvT from my man Jaypee, and he asks, what do I do about my units dying, and how do I avoid that? So, today we're going to be looking at his PvT style, getting a general sense of how his build order goes, pitfalls, things that he should think about to improve his build, and in general just basic PvT strategy. Now, Jaypee is a gold player, so still fairly in the lower leagues, but working his way up. And our goal today is to give him some advice to get him out of Gold League, because we love it when the viewers improve. So, PvT in general is a fairly interesting matchup. You have to kind of balance between defending drops and dealing with the big Marine Marauder medevac timings that there are. So, unfortunately, Jaypee is going to be scouting his opponent very last, so he's not going to have a whole lot of intel. But generally speaking, getting out a Zealot first, as Jaypee is doing, and immediately following it up with a Stalker is fairly safe as far as openings go. This deals with any kind of weird straight rushes or Reaper timings that Terran players have, and in general just a fairly effective build. Now unfortunately he has not scouted the command center, so he's still a little bit in the dark, doesn't know whether or not his opponent is going for an earlier push, but he's going to be getting on another gateway. He's getting double gas and then should be throwing down his robotics facility here shortly. I kind of want to breeze through the early stages of the game, because the early stages of the game there's mechanically not a whole lot of issues with. The only downside is at this point he probably should already have his expansion up, and he probably could have skipped the second gateway just at the beginning, because in general PvT, if you don't see anything at like 5:30ish, you shouldn't really worry too terribly much. He's got plenty of units out for right now, and is finally going to go scout his opponent and see the bunker. So, at this point, I want to pause for a second and talk about your units and where they are located, because at this point you don't really have any indication of really anything. You've only seen a bunker, you don't have any idea of tech or unit composition or anything. So, for all you know, if we look at your vision, there could not be an expansion here. And in that case, you'd be in a world of hurt coming very shortly. So, definitely going to be wanting to get the Observer out, as you are. So, everything is looking good. We can go ahead and keep it on ×2 for now. Observer's going to kind of come over, and we're going to see what we can see. And we're going to come in and see an expansion, and we notice that he does have a Widow Mine. So at this point, you've already gotten your Colossus Bay up, which is fine. I think you are lacking a little bit on the gateway counts, because at this point you kind of want to be sitting on 3 gateways since your expansion's finished. Things are starting to look good as far as economy, and 2 base with 3 gateways and a robotics facility is generally fairly okay. As your natural becomes a little bit more saturated, you're going to want to throw down 2 or 3 more gateways, depending on what you're up against. So overall, I think the opening of this build is done fairly well. Mechanically, I don't see a whole lot of issues, except for the occasional lack of probes in the production tab. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and speed this up since we really haven't seen much. Things are just kind of getting underway. And at this point, you're looking to push out. Now, one thing that I would highly suggest is, since at this point you really haven't scouted anything, taking just, I think it's 100 energy off of your Century to do a Hallucinated Phoenix, get into your opponent's base and really see what's going on. Because, I mean, at this point, you don't know what you're up against. You know that he's got Widow Mine, so you know he's got at least a factory, but you don't know if he's going for Widow Mine drops or, anything of the sort. You don't know if he's teching up faster to get starports and go something crazy like battle cruisers, or you just don't know anything at this point. So you're going to be looking to push out. By setting your army here, you kind of put yourself in a weird situation if your opponent is already pushed out, because you haven't done any scouting, you haven't really controlled the middle of the map, you really don't know anything. So this is a little bit of a risky move right off the get-go. And actually, I think this is where you actually, bam, you see a drop coming, and I'm pretty sure that this could have gone a lot better. Let's go ahead and take a look. So you get some really nice shots off. And at this point, you've got your mothership core, so you're like, well, gosh darn it, I'm going to recall, which is great, except for your mothership core decides to get a mind of its own and recall only partial of your units. Now, just as a small little tip, since you probably have all of your units on your number one hotkey or some hotkey of any sorts, since the mothership core is actually the first unit on your hotkey, you can actually just immediately hit your hotkey, right-click the center of like your ball of units, and then hit the R button. That'll leave a little crosshair that you can then click on your nexus on the minimap, and it'll instantly recall to the nexus that you clicked to. You don't have to worry about moving your units or anything. It just automatically does what it needs to do. So obviously that would have alleviated this issue. But nice little tip for you. So you're going to come in here. Widow Mines are going to get down, and they're going to do lots of damage to your Colossus, and you're going to lose one of your Colossus. And at this point, you're kind of in a pickle because, you've got lots of money, units in your base, and you can't really do much about it. So, does he actually get out with these? Oh, so he does get out with those medevacs, which is a little bit unfortunate for you. But you're going to come in and clean up the rest of the stuff. I think these Widow Mines get one more kill. But, so I want to ask a question. And at this point, what are you thinking in your mind? Obviously, you need to be thinking about these Widow Mines that are going to be killing your units fairly. Obviously, you're going to be getting your probes back to working. But if we look at your production tab, what do we see? We see upgrades going, which is good, and more Colossus production. Now, at this point, you're floating 500 minerals, and you're just now getting down these two gateways. Now, if we go back, I don't know, let's say 20 seconds or so, maybe a little further. Okay, I think that was... yeah, that's about good. So, as we notice, you're just now getting your +2 up, but you're not really going to be microing any of your zealots at this point. You can immediately take one of your probes and get down those gateways. It's all about being able to understand what is needed at the current point in time. If you're spending too much time thinking about, oh, well, he's killed lots of my units, I need to go attack, or whatever, you're going to lose the focus of your macro. And that's kind of the biggest issue that I see with most Bronze to Gold League players is they slip on up on their macro a little too much, and they just can't produce enough units and have to leave the game, even though they're floating 2K minerals at the point that they die. So, just something to think about. APM wise, doing pretty good for a gold leaguer. 118. I think on my average game I sit around probably around 160. So yeah, 118 is not too bad. Whoops, wrong button. We want that button. So at this point you're choosing to push out. Now, yes, you've lost a fair amount of probes and a Colossus and a handful of units, but pushing out at this point, he's more or less kept your army at the same exact size for pretty minimal cost. He's only lost a handful of Marines, a couple Widow Mines, and a couple Marauders, and the only thing you can presume is he's been macroing perfectly behind it. Obviously, in your league, it's generally not that case, but just assume that way, so that way you can go into the mid to late game and understand where you're at relative to him. So you have already revealed your tech. You've told him, you've showed him your Colossus, so he is going to immediately have started Viking production. It's just kind of a general, this is what he's going to do. At this point, you should have already thrown down your Templar archives. You should definitely be thinking about that. You're floating enough gas that you could probably go straight for Storm and get a handful of Templar, and they'd be ready with Storm fairly quickly. So you're going to push up here, get pushed back by a fairly big army, and you actually got a very good idea of how many Vikings he has. So you obviously don't know whether or not he's going to continue Viking production, but you can assume that he's probably going to continue Viking production at least until he's got 10 or 12 of those bad boys. So that pretty much minimizes any possibility that these Colossus are going to be very effective. So getting those Templars up at this point is definitely a must-have, as we do finally see the Templar archives going down. Now, obviously your opponent was a little cheeky and took this weird expansion down here, but you really can't assume anything. You are going to be getting a third of your own, which is fine. I think currently where you're at, you're in a decent position to do so, because you are going to be mined out of your main fairly soon. Drop comes in, you deal with it pretty well. Don't really lose any units, and pretty much clean it up. So, always good. Now this is where I start to get a little bit concerned, because you haven't done a very good job of getting up your production, and you're only sitting on 5 gateways. Your third is going to be done here shortly. Generally speaking, on 2 base economy, which is most likely what you'll be at once you get a handful of probes over here. 2 base economy, you could be sitting on 6 to 8 gateways, depending on the number of Colossus you're producing. If you're producing 2 at a time, probably 5 and 6 is good. If you're only producing 1 at a time, you can definitely probably push 7 and 8. So you're a little bit lacking in the production area. Definitely want to make sure you're building up your gateways, getting up your units as much as possible. So finally got some Templar up, getting storms, everything's looking good. I believe you already scouted that he sent a whole bunch of probes down here, so you're going to start looking for that. Getting up a warp prism, everything's looking peachy. 3-3 is actually almost done too as well, so definitely looking good there. The biggest thing is, as a function of not having that extra production, your minerals are starting to get a little out of control. So definitely need to work on getting your production up a little bit earlier. And you're kind of in a tough spot because your opponent is already maxed out, and you're at roughly about a 50 supply deficit by the time he hits your base. You do see him as we check out your vision, and you see the Vikings, so you've got a pretty good idea that he's there. So at this point, you're going to pick off a handful of stuff. Now, in your situation, this is a very, very tough spot to be. Your opponent has gained high ground. Obviously, you've still got vision with your Nexus, and things are okay in that regard, but his Viking count is very scary, and these Colossus are pretty much going to insta-die. So definitely some issues there. Now we're going to go ahead and slow this down and check out this engagement. 1 storm goes off, 2 really good storms go off, and actually this engagement would have gone a lot worse if these storms didn't have go off as well as they did. Now we do want to make note that your gateways are ready to warp in, so you need to be warping in units like ASAP. And kind of going back to the production, had you had 2 or 3 more gateways, you would have definitely been able to get a round in just before the attack had gone on and been able to do a fair amount more damage. Now, I do want to kind of back up a little, because I'm pretty sure we've still got those gateways up. The engagement really hasn't even started, and you haven't warped in. This basically means that you're going to lose a set of warp-ins, which definitely would change the outcome of this this battle. So definitely be aware of where your warp gates are as far as their cooldown cycle, and definitely make sure you're warping in as much as you possibly can, because obviously the name of the game is to get up to 200 as quickly as possible and then just go walk over your opponent. So gonna speed it up through that engagement now. Good storms, awesome. And you see that you still haven't warped in units, and now that you're finally seeing that you're losing the engagement, you finally start to warp in units, and it's not enough at this point. So, a little bit of a bummer there, and I don't remember. I'm getting close to where you call GG. You've done a fair amount of damage with these zealots. I mean, this guy's got 10 kills, this guy's got 5, and yeah, doing pretty good with those zealots. And at this point, you just got a whole bunch of Vikings at your front door doing their thing. You start to warp in units, but you're not considering. Well, you still have a High Templar sitting back here. That would be nice with your army. And then obviously, depending on how many of these Vikings you kill off, which you kill off a fair amount, obviously you can start Colossus production now that you've taken out a good majority of his anti-air. So you're not really in a bad position at this point. Since you're lacking so much production, you can't deal with it. And I believe this is where, no, not quite GG yet. I mean, he's been just macroing to death. He's starting to salvage his bunkers, and now he's just going to push in here, and you're still at a 40, well, a little bit more than 40 supply deficit. So yeah, you're going to come in, warp in. Not sure I agree with warping in all these units down here, but I mean, at this point, it's kind of a, look at how much money you're floating. Add on 3-4 extra gateways, man. It's only going to be able to help you out in the long run, give you the opportunity to warp in more units, and get your unit count up a lot faster. You do take down the planetary and put them back onto, well, one base essentially. So technically speaking, if you can somehow deal with this, you are in fine shape. His economy is in shambles. You do have these 2 Templars, which probably would have helped you in this final engagement, but obviously can't get them down quick enough, and I believe this is where you more or less call it GG. So, what have we learned? Production, production, production. You need to make sure you're spending your money. If you don't spend your money early enough, you're not going to have enough units to deal with the big Marine Marauder medevac pushes that come. PvT is probably my second worst matchup, and I think that is what I struggle the most with, is having that balance of splash damage units and knowing when to transition from Colossi to High Templar. You were a little bit late on the transition, but overall I think it was, executed fairly well. But having those extra gateways earlier on is going to do wonders for you. You're going to be able to get out just enough units to deal with any type of big push that's going to come at you. I mean, it came at around the 20-minute mark, so you should be in a fairly comfortable position at this point. So yeah, so I hope this helped you out. Feel free to leave comments in the comment section below. Also, feel free to like, subscribe, favorite if you are not Jaypee. But yeah, if you want me to cast one of your replays, give you some tips, help you out, feel free to send an email to the email in the description. Just give me a few bits of information, all that's in the description. Check me out there. Also, feel free to check me out on twitch.tv. I cast my games live, usually interact with people in the chat. It's a good time. You should definitely come check me out. Yeah, and I think that is going to be it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next game.